Good afternoon and welcome to Conversations on Showing Up for Kids. My name is Tim Markle. I'm director of the Southern Regional Center for Children and Youth with Special Healthcare Needs. And I love getting together with folks, it seems every Wednesday, and talking about stuff that's important to kids and families who have children and youth with special healthcare needs. Well, maybe not kids who have children with, but could be children with, but anyway. So children with special healthcare needs and their families and the professionals and, all that mess of stuff. And I am so excited today because I have a friend of mine who is joining us. Regena is going to be talking to us about the Birth to 3 program. I have been involved in Wisconsin now in the children and youth with special healthcare needs realm for over 12 years, and I've seen some changes in the Birth to 3 program, and I think it's always good to get refreshed on what this really vital, important program is, how people can get enrolled in it, how can they take the best advantage of it, and just what currently is going on. So Regena, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Tim. So I think I know a couple people here, Tim and Eric. Eric is one of my people that I work with in the Birth to 3 program. Awesome. He is he's a program coordinator administrator for Dane County. So that's great. So hi, Eric. And so we're a small group. So I do have like visuals to show, like if you have questions, and it might be more helpful just to see it and kind of screenshot something that you want to know more about. But just to keep this kind of focused on a conversation and questions, I'll leave that PowerPoint as like a side point to bring up periodically. So really, like Tim said, I am a children and family program specialist with DHS in the Bureau of Children's Services. I support counties primarily in the southern region. And really that's just helping with rules, regulations, and how to operate the program at the county level. I'm there to ask questions, but really the point of today is just to talk to you about what the Birth to 3 program is. So, when you're thinking about kiddos, obviously what we've learned and research has shown is that those years from birth to 3 are very important. At that time is when most of the brain development is happening. And that's where children are making those most connections. And so that's why this Birth to 3 program is really focused on hearing about and learning about kids as early as possible so that we have as much time to provide early interventions to support that brain development that's just happening pretty much almost at the speed of light. So what research says is that in the first 3 years, a child's brain has up to, I think, twice as many nerve cells connections as in adulthood. So really there's things happening after that point in time, but it's really key and vital to get in there in those first 3 years to have the best impact. So what the Birth to 3 program is that we provide services to families that have children ages birth to 3 or up to, so it's under 3. So you can go up to the age of 3, but it's not, once they turn 3, that's when our services would transfer over based on eligibility of the child to another program. So the Birth to 3 program, it serves children who have delays and disabilities. So I'll pull up a slide that just kind of gives you a little bit of a visual about what we do and who we are. So, like I said, we serve children under the age of 3. Who we are is we are a team of professional service providers, and we support the child's growth and learning during that time. So when you apply or are referred to the Birth to 3 program, so it's not an application, we receive a referral to the Birth to 3 program. We determine eligibility, doing an evaluation. And at that point in time, what happens then is services for children who are found eligible would include special education services, occupational therapy, physical therapy, and there are other services that are provided based on that child's individual needs or the family's needs and concerns. So for example, if a child is visually impaired, there would be some vision specialists that are brought to the team. If they were deaf or hard of hearing, there would be Wisconsin Sounds Beginnings that would come to and be part of that team to provide those additional supports and services to that family. So I'll stop there so that we can ask questions. Yes, Tim.
Yep. So my question is, when you talk about the it's not a diagnosis, but the assessment. Where does that take place? Who's doing that assessment? Who are these people that are going to tell me about my child?
Definitely. So depending on who refers your child, a lot of times a child will come to the Birth to 3 program having been screened by a pediatrician or a doctor. Child care provider might screen a child and have some concerns. And then once that referral comes to the Birth to 3 program, there's an intake process that's usually done by, it's sometimes an intake worker, sometimes it's a service coordinator who will get more information about the child. They'll ask a few questions, and what they'll do then is schedule a time to come out and talk with your family, and then they will do the evaluation. The people who are doing the evaluation often depends on information you've shared, right? So if you're thinking that there might be a speech concern, often who will come to your home will be a service coordinator and maybe the speech therapist. It may be a service coordinator and the educator, right? So it all depends on kind of what the team discusses and who they think is best to go out and do this evaluation for your child. All team members are professional service providers, and because we work in a team approach, a lot of times a team member feels comfortable providing an evaluation that might seem outside of their quote unquote discipline because of that team approach, and they've learned the skills across the board, right? So not to take away from any individual expertise, but we have learned to learn from each other, build each other's capacity so we can jointly serve families. And then I'm gonna, does that answer your question, Tim, about who might be coming out to do that evaluation?
Who might be coming out to do the evaluation? And then leading into Catherine's question, just what is and this then goes to the other part of your PowerPoint. So this is the next thing that you were talking about is what's the purpose of the assessment? Because it's not to diagnose, but why do you do the assessment?
Definitely. So what we do, there's kind of 3 distinct activities that happen. There's screening to say, hey, is there a concern or not? There's the evaluation to determine whether the child's eligible or not. And then we have an assessment process to give us more information to help develop the individualized family service plan. And how are we going to structure services? What will that look like? What are we seeing and observing? That's what we're assessing at that time. The Birth to 3 program doesn't diagnose for autism, but those screening tools, additional observations would provide the service providers with an indication that there might be a child that has autism. And in that case, some providers, each county is a little bit different. There are some counties that will do the MCHAT. Other counties often refer the family back to their provider to say, hey, they have this conversation with the family, we're seeing some concerns. Depending on that family's readiness, they'll either kind of just share that they think the child might have autism. They may just share that there's additional developmental concerns that we think you need to go back to your pediatrician about. A lot of times that relationship is good enough between the provider and the family that they can have that difficult, maybe difficult conversation, right? Depending on where that family's readiness is, or they might already kind of have an indication. But yes, we don't diagnose autism. We would pick up on those developmental kind of indications that there might be autism concerns. And I'll take the next question in there. Are there citizenship requirements for the Birth to 3 program? There are not. There are not citizenship. It's not like some of the other programs like CLTS where we need a verified SSN and things like that. It is not. So that's a great question. Any other questions? And then I can just share.
I just wanted to, with that, reiterate what Eric had responded to Barbara, is that families can self-refer to Birth to 3. Is that if, like in the case of my child, is we had a family friend who was knowledgeable who said, you may want to get him tested. And so one of the places that they referred us to is Birth to 3. So we were able to self-refer to the Birth to 3 program.
Great. Yeah. Definitely. So one of the things that's really important when you're making a referral or talking about a referral to the Birth to Three program is like, when is a child referral? Like, what does that eligibility piece look like? And so eligibility is based on either the child has a diagnosed disability or diagnosed condition that we know often impacts child's development. There's also the indication of 25% delay in one or more of the developmental areas. And then there's just also atypical development. So let's just say they do an evaluation and that 25% delay doesn't show up on those tools. Our professional service providers can often say this child's development is atypical enough that we are going to find this child eligible for Birth to Three program services. Once found eligible for the program, all services occur in what we call the natural environment. And it's important to think about the natural environment beyond a place. We think about the natural environment as who do they spend their time with? Their family, their friends? Is it in the home? Is it at grandma's? Are there community settings in which the family goes to or accesses that they want to access? And then within those families' routines, right? So what do you naturally do? Where do you go? How do you spend your day? And what are those activities that you want to participate in? So I will stop there and just ask if there's any questions, but really the natural environment could be, we'd like to go to the park, you know, and have services at a park. We go to church on Sundays. We'd like to have our child be able to sit through, you know, Sunday school. And so, you know, our teams do their best in accommodating those things. Of course, you know, nights and weekends are always something that you have to coordinate with a family. You know, but it is something that we try to accommodate because those are the environments in which we want the child to be successful. So how do we do this? We really do it by using that individualized family service plan. That family service plan will have your services that the family is going to be receiving. It'll have the strategies that will be used. It'll have measurements to determine the progress. And it will also have steps in there to talk about how to support transition. So when that child turns 3 or is about to turn 3, what are those steps that the Birth to Three program is going to do to help that family then transition out of the program? At that time, it may look different for different families. A child may be potentially eligible for special education services through the school district, in which they would get a transition planning conference with the school district to help the family transition. Other times, a child might be determined that they're not eligible because they've made a lot of gains. And then, you know, they would talk about what's next for that family. Do you want to be connected to other community programs or services? We're also focusing on support or encouraging our county programs to support families through other kinds of transitions that a family might experience while they're in the program. So if they're moving, if there's a new baby brought to the family. So transition, we're trying to think of as changes that might change that family's dynamic, and how do we support them through the typical transitions and the less typical transitions. So any questions about what we do, how we do it, where we do it, eligibility requirements?
Hi, can you repeat that last part about the transition?
I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more, Regina, about the provision of services. I know for quite a while, the Birth to Three program was providing more of a coaching model rather than direct services. Is that still the way services are and supports are delivered to families?
Yes, and I think what we're always trying to I guess balance here with the Birth to Three program is the perspective of what coaching is, right? So our perspective is that coaching is direct services, in that you're not just asking questions, right? Sometimes there's a misperception that you're just asking questions, that you can't touch the child, that you can't, it's not a hands-on approach. Our definition of coaching includes all of that. You are not only modeling for the parent, you're coaching them through the activities you're doing with the parent, you're helping them modeling it, you're touching the child depending on that individual needs, right? You're meeting the family with where they're at and their capacity and their understanding of the interventions that you're providing. And you're helping them to work it within the natural routine. So we are still using what we call a primary service provider approach, and we are still looking at, tweaking our service providers' understanding of what coaching is, but also the family's understanding about their role in what coaching is, and also just the general perception of the medical and other communities in that it is direct services. We can provide direct services. We can model, we can touch, we can do therapies. We can, there's also that special education component. So it is all inclusive, but our philosophy is that if we coach the parents in how to provide interventions to their child, that will have the most impact on that child's development. And that's really important. I think I'll share this kind of next slide that I had created. And the reason why we do that is because that's who's going to be with the child most of the time, right? We can come in and provide formal interventions for a fraction of the time, that hour, a couple of times a week, however that might look. But ultimately, if that parent can do some of those strategies similarly to what we're doing with them in that hour throughout their typical day when they're playing and working and doing other activities, they're going to be exposed to that movement, that activity, a lot more than just if that 1 hour of early intervention. So really, this is when we look at where a child or a toddler spends their time. We're looking at they spend a lot of time sleeping, they spend a lot of time with their families and their normal daily routines, and then formal intervention, we come in. It's just really a piece of that. So kind of, yes, I would say, Barbara, the short answer to your question is that yes, we are currently still using that coaching model, that coach approach, but we're working with our providers and with the general community just to understand what that means and what that entails.
That's a really helpful description, Regina. Thank you. That helps me understand the coaching model much more thoroughly. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
And I don't know if it's helpful, but there is a video by Dathan Rush and Melissa Sheldon, yes, that talk about the misconceptions of coaching. We could share that link in the chat pod, but it really does, they break down what coaching is and how it does work, how it works for families. All right, okay. So any questions? And then otherwise I can jump forward. So we did talk about a little bit in the chat pod about who can make a referral. And really, what I have to here just to show you as a visual is just anyone. Like you said, anyone can make a referral to the Birth to 3 program, starting with the parents, grandparents, family members, hospital clinics. So I won't read everything that's here, but just about anybody can make a referral. What we do say is that if you are not the family themselves making the referral, we do want you to have a conversation with the family that talks about, I would like to make a referral to the Birth to 3 program or support you in making a referral to the Birth to 3 program, but you as a family can definitely call and make a referral to the Birth to 3 program. And we do have a contact us webpage. We can put the link into the chat pod into there. And it's really, depending on if you think it's quick and easy, we try to make it quick and easy where you can pick your county from the drop down and find the primary point of referral for your particular county. And so that's the place to kind of start if you want to make a referral. You can definitely call us at the state too. If you go to this contact us state page, you'll see there's a link to state contacts, and we'll definitely support you in making that that connection, but you could definitely reach out to your county primary point of referral. And can you repeat the transition process? Yes, so it will look very individualized for each family, but the general steps to the process are that about 2 years and 3 months, your team is going to start talking about transition and what it's going to look like. They do have a timeline in which to make the referral between 2 years, 3 months, and 2 years, 6 months. And then you need to have a transition planning conference 90 days, no less than 90 days before the child's third birthday. And what that means is that you need to schedule a meeting with the school district in which that child lives, and have a transition planning conference. At that conference, the family is there, the Birth to 3 program is there, the LEA is there. You will have a conversation about, the child's potential eligibility for special education services. A lot of times additional information or content is shared with consent from the family about the child's, either diagnosis if there is one, or supports and services that they are receiving, right? And so then it's that opportunity for then the school district to share information with the family about what special education looks like in the K through 12 world or early education world, right? Because it's going to be a little bit different eligibility reasons, different tools will be used. And so that's that conversation. And we like to kind of just have the family do that warm handoff with families. If a family is going to be referred to another program like Head Start or something like that, we often like to have something like a TPC, maybe a meeting. A lot of times, maybe now it's even easier because we have this virtual capacity, but to make that connection for the family rather than just giving like a name and a phone number and a contact information. But the family's comfort level really depends on that. If they're like, yep, I'm okay with getting a list of resources and I'll make those connections on my own, or I really would like to be supported in making connections to some other programs. We would like our programs to kind of support the family in that warm handoff during a transition.
Thank you.
Mhm. Any other questions about like what it looks like? So a referral, and I'll just kind of briefly, this is really high level. Referral comes into the Birth to 3 program. Really what a referral consists of is all we need is a name and contact information. If you provide additional information, great, but that's not what's needed. We will reach out and ask for the information that we need to then schedule that time to come out to the family's home and do an evaluation. For your family, if you'd like, families can request an evaluation. Some programs are opting to screen and some programs are saying we're just going to go right to an evaluation. So families can request an evaluation. And so they'll come do the evaluation. They'll have an eligibility determination meeting with you to tell you if your child's eligible for the program or not. Often if they're not, we like them to programs to provide resources for that family where they might go to for some support if they still are concerned about their child's development.
Ooh, that would be where the regional centers come in, right, Regina?
Yes, definitely.
Yes.
That's what we like to, right? And,
yes.
so definitely. So that's where we like to, our programs to then share other resources for families, right? Hopefully they're providing the regional center information resource, for families when they connect with the program. But again, each service coordinator, right, it has their, level of knowledge, understanding. We do have turnover in the program. So we really support our service coordinators in learning about all of the options that are available for families. Or we try to, I should say, our best. So you have the eligibility determination meeting. Your team will, so what will happen is that'll take that back to the team. They'll talk about what they've seen, what they observed. They'll talk about who they think would be the best primary service provider. It's important to tell families that you will have a whole entire team supporting your child, right? So if there's a new concern that comes up, like let's just say there was only a speech concern in the beginning, but something new happens and you're concerned with some additional development, there is that OT, there is that PT on that team. And when they go back and have what we call team meetings, we call this teaming, your primary service provider, if that is not their specific area of discipline, you have access to those strategies, those supports, those services, because your primary service provider is going to go back to your team and have a conversation about, hey, I'm observing this new thing. And we can do joint visits where, depending on the level of concern, they can bring that person out to meet with your family. Or what will happen is that, and if teams have been working together long enough, they know how this OTPT supports this particular concern or development, what strategy supports and services and activities are used, right? So you can request to, you can request a joint visit if you are concerned. But we do want our families to know that your primary service provider is capable and has access to that information to support all areas of development. But there is that opportunity to then speak with that individual or connect with that individual specifically.
I just really love that point, Regina, because I know that families will have that primary contact as that point person, but knowing that that point person has then access, first they have knowledge through experience and through professional development on their own team, but then, they can't know everything. And if they come across like that, they're just like, I'm just not sure what's going on. They have access to this professional team that can provide them the expertise.
Correct. Yes. And we even, like we said, for what we call low incidence, I don't like that term particularly, but like, deaf and hard of hearing, we have a partnership with Wisconsin Sound Beginnings, who will bring their expertise to that team. Recently, they've got a new structure where they've got specialists that specialize in if you're thinking your family wants to do ASL, if you're thinking you want to go with a hearing aid, like different verbal communication you want to work on. So they've got specialties within that team so that we can really individualize it based on what that family's goals are for their child, and which route they want to go. So we really try to individualize it for each child and each family.
Which makes, which makes so much sense. And then just talk about the deaf and hard of hearing is that young age is getting them on that path of communication, as communication is so important for kids.
Right. And so once this conversation happens with the family and you kind of talk about what you want to work on and where you want to go, your service coordinator and your primary service provider will develop this IFSP. So you'll have an IFSP meeting in which you'll develop the IFSP and you'll put on the services, the goals, and all, everything that your family wants to work on. That IFSP can be updated at any time. You as a family can request for that information to be updated at any point in time or revisit that. Each program is a little bit different, but most of our programs will revisit that IFSP, especially for younger children, like 3 to 6 months, right? Because a lot of development happens within 3 to 6 months. And so they'll come back and revisit the IFSP frequently. It is required to be done annually, but a lot of our programs do, real frequently just to check in on how progress is going. You as a family can also, just say, I'd like to work on this IFSP, I'd like to add a goal, I'd like to change a goal, those types of things. So it's really, we want the families to be centered and also to be kind of driving what they want to happen for their child and family. And then we're just the experts, like to tell you how, like what strategies will get you there, but you're the expert in your child and your family and what you want to see for your family and your child, and your child the best, right? So we just want to be there to help with decision making, and we want that to be a team process. So, and when we refer to a team, that team means the family is included, right? It's not just like this birth to 3 team and then we've got the family over here. No, it's the team means the family is included in that. So that's what we mean when we refer to the family. So after you have that IFSP developed, services begin. Like I said, anytime there's a concern with services or how things are going, you can request to talk about that with your service coordinator. You can talk about it with your primary service provider. They'll determine if we want to do a formal, IFSP update or what might be needed. And so that's, if your child then gets within typical range. So what we're looking for is the child to get within typical range of development. If that happens and your child's on par with those developmental milestones, your family can talk to your service coordinator. They'll probably have the conversation about, What do you want to do? Do we want to monitor development, make sure that development sustains for a bit? Do you feel comfortable that you'd like to discharge from the program? So you'll have that conversation. If your child, is progressing but doesn't get to that typical development, you stay on the program until they age out, until 3, in which that transition activity will occur. And your service provider and your team will be there to help you with those transition activities. And then from there, once we have that transition planning conference, the Part B program, or special education program, comes in and takes over, supporting your family with services. Any other questions about the kind of and that was really high level, right? There's a lot of stuff, as Eric knows, that happens in there. It's not that streamlined. We've got a lot of stuff that we like to individualize and do, and there's a lot of team meetings that happen. We just, so that's really simplifying it, really high level.
And again, I think the key takeaway is what you stressed, just that families are such an important part of the team. This isn't services that are being provided to your child. They are provided with you, with your guidance. You are the expert in your child, and it's got to match. There has to be that conversation.
Definitely very important. We do some type of family assessment. Sometimes people will do a routines-based interview, but it's really just to get an idea and a picture of your family, what's important to you, what's working well, what do you want to see working better. We really want to incorporate and value your culture, your, anything, any kind of diversity, religious beliefs. We really want to incorporate all of that and be aware of all of that, so that we're being responsive and aware of anything that you value and it's important to you. So
I have a question, Regina. As you're exploring the development of the IFSP, and as families are identifying what is important to them, what kind of support is there when families are struggling with things like housing insecurity or food insecurity? And does the Birth to 3 team get involved with any supports around that?
we do. And so a lot of times what our conversations are like is that you can't go into a family's home and provide intervention and have success if the family's dealing with other things that are more of a priority: food, shelter, right? There's just there's things you need to address with families. We're not in there working with a child, providing services to a child. We are supporting the family holistically. So often our service providers are equipped to know who to contact in their communities for food insecurities, for housing support. And we also, provide at teleconferences. Often we'll have, let's just say 211 come on, Well Badger will come on, so that our service coordinators are kind of aware of what might be available either statewide, or they are often really savvy in knowing what's in their community to support families. But that is something that we are becoming more aware and understanding that those supports and services, often that might take precedent over a visit, right? Let's just say we're planning on going in there. We have our plan of what we're going to do that day, but the family shares something with us that we need to pull back. We need to think about what supports and resources this family is needing for this particular concern. That includes a focus on social emotional development. We are continuing to train and explore how do we support social emotional development and mental health of families. Some of our teams do have access to mental health professionals as part of the team, or somebody within their county that they can pull into the team if needed. Others have attended a social emotional capstone and are certified in strategies to support social emotional and mental health development. We currently or recently provided social emotional mini grants to programs to think about other training opportunities, programs, strategies, frameworks to support social emotional and mental health within families. And then also we encourage them to know who are those mental health providers in your community that you can make a referral to. So not only do we receive referrals, we can also help families and we can make referrals, right? And provide resources to other supports and services to help with some of that. A lot of our programs also have done this. Oh my gosh, why did it escape me really quick? Trauma. It's this trauma training that's kind of that's been going trauma focused, kind of trauma centered training. A lot of our programs have gone through that to have that awareness of like, what does trauma look like? How do you support that? And just to be aware of that and how that impacts your family. And just, I would say we're at differing levels of comfort with, like, depending on the discipline of saying, is this my role? Is it my role? Not my role? But we're in the process of giving all providers those tools to address it and then point the family in a direction on where they can go, because we aren't the experts, right? We're not mental health providers. So we're not mental health providers, but we want to be able to support the families on the level that we can and then refer them out for additional supports and services. All right. Any other questions about how we support families? Yeah, so trauma-informed practices. Thank you. That's exactly what I was looking for. Yes. Other specific emotions. So I don't know. So again, without knowing, we do have a variety of assessment tools that are used, and I don't know like the details of the specifics of the questions that are asked. I think they're designed to get at that, but I don't know if they would be this questions that a mental health provider might ask or dive into. But they're designed to pick up on some of those things. But again, I don't, because I've not been in the position of doing home visit or doing an assessment. I don't want to speak to the tools and how in depth they might get into questions about mental health. But the trainings that programs are diving into do have that element in that piece. So as programs are piloting some of these trainings, our goal is then to measure how effective each of that those training programs were, those pilots were, and then what did that look like? What did that entail? And what can we kind of encourage statewide, right? So we really want to look at like, what are those tools that are used within each of those frameworks, and what are we encouraging programs to use on a regular basis and work into their processes. Okay, so again, I think when we identify a family that that has an intellectual disability or some literacy concerns, again, because it's individualized, we really provide them with what they need. So is it that they need the materials in a different format? Do they need them read to them? Do they need, so that's what that kind of information seeking provides, is like, how do we best support this family with where they're at and where their current abilities are? We are very big on encouraging programs to see the strengths of all abilities of parents, to recognize that there are differing ability levels and capacities for parents, but that all parents are capable. And so it's just a matter of meeting them where they're at and then providing them with those supports and services that can strengthen their current capabilities and their current capacities. As far as like specifics on what those services might look like, it would have been great to have like a service coordinator or a service provider here to kind of share with you more details on that. I just don't want to provide any misinformation. And Eric, I don't know if you've ever had team conversations that speak to this. Sorry to put you on the spot. But yeah, if you haven't, it's something we could dig into.
Are you talking about mental health?
Yeah, well, the question was, what if the parents or caregiver has a disability themselves? What do services look like, right? And so really it's finding out what their strengths are, what their ability levels are. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's really working with the parents, not being judgmental. Every parent has the ability to parent, so working with those parents where they're at, kind of, maybe related to the mental health component. It's more of an art than a science that I think to help service coordinators and OTs and PTs sort of be aware of different parenting styles and maybe some parental limitations, and then to bring those back to their teams to do strategizing. Hey, I'm kind of not sure how to maybe go ahead with this technique. I've been trying to show the parents we're really sort of stumbling. Does anybody have any ideas? Or is anybody aware of another resource in the community that maybe we can tack on to? So I think kind of like Regina's saying, it really is more of an art than a science. It's trying to identify those flags and then maybe bringing those back to teams, building competence in providers. You have to remember that the majority of services are provided by an OT, a PT, and a speech and language. And those disciplines, as we're learning, and I think the state is also trying to sort of indoctrinate, is those disciplines don't really grow up as social workers and learning how to talk with people about maybe these more interpersonal things. So to think of a PT or an OT as being a mental health provider, or they might have some creative solutions about coaching techniques. But if parents have disability limitations, they might not know how to sort of think beyond that and sort of relate it to mental health situations too. They probably won't be a good clinician, but they could probably identify some red flags per se, or some barriers, or maybe some areas where the parents could use some. Does that help?
That is helpful. And we're at 12:44. So the one thing I'll really say really quick is that we do have social workers that are part of the team as well. Sometimes our service coordinators are also social workers.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a piece that can be brought to the team. It may not be your primary service provider expertise. And also there's our special educators on the team, right? They're special educators, and that can help with those parents that have those disabilities because that's their area of expertise, right? So if you consult with the special educator on your team, that's going to be where you can find out how do you help this particular parent. So sorry, Tim, we're at 12:45. The last thing I'll put in the thing is I just want to say that there's resources, outreach campaign resources that have a brochure about the program. We have a booklet about the program. We have referral tips to how to make referrals. We have services at a glance. So many materials that you can go out and just get more information about what's available for families and professionals.
Thank you so much, Regina. I know that, Birth to 3 is a very involved program, and I titled this The Basics of Birth to 3. And I think you definitely covered the basics and then dug in a little bit more. And I really appreciate the interaction. I will be putting together a resource sheet based on today and based on your PowerPoint, and sending out the PowerPoint because it has some of those links that you were just talking about. But I would thank everybody for joining us today. Thank you, especially Regina. Yep,
Yes,
Barbara wanted
I did
to
want to
mention
mention those too.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Barbara.
No, I just wanted to mention that a couple of that Family Voices of Wisconsin has a couple of new video fact sheets that were created in consultation with the Birth to 3 staff at the Department of Health Services. And those fact sheets are designed for families to complement all the great information that Regina just mentioned. And Regina, I just wanted to thank you for this presentation. It was super helpful.
Thanks for mentioning those. Those are hot off the press. So yes, check out the videos as well.
Yep. And we will get those. We will get a link to those videos into the resource sheet. Absolutely.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all very much. Have a great rest of your afternoon.